Immortality versus invincibility is actually the only way I think this fight could have gone down in the final showdown, but despite it seemingly being the only way it could have gone down, I didn't see it coming in the slightest. And that's what I love about Ranking of Kings, is how, honestly, my money was on most likely Miranjo using a similar kind of holy magic that we've seen Queen Hilling do. It was kind of getting teased in last week's episode, but the fact that it actually ended up being the king coming in clutch, at first I was like, holy shit, he's knocking everyone away. And I wasn't buying into him betraying fully them, because he kind of has two different loyalties, both on Miranjo's side as well as his family side. But very much him like attacking all them didn't sit right with me, not only just for the pure visceral anger, but also thinking he has to be up to something. But I wasn't expecting him to use Queen Hilling's style of magic, because Daida ultimately inherited that type of magic from his mother. And in return, because now that the king is possessing him, with all of his strength, he can use up half of his strength to heal everyone now that they're all clobbered in the same location. And that was, without a doubt, one of the craziest coming in clutch moments that I've seen in anime in some time. And without a doubt, the best crazy clutch moment that this show has seen to date. And to see the idea of immortality versus invincibility, while it's not anything new or the first time we've ever seen this in storytelling, the difference in how Oaken versus the king went down is very interesting, because ultimately you have a giant in the form of a little boy's body. So all that strength, all that ferocity, no sword's going to be able to penetrate him, meaning he's invincible. But then you have Oaken, who doesn't matter if you clobber him down into literal muck and guck, he will come back no matter what. And to see that idea of a fight, at first I thought what he was doing was he was going to bury him alive. I wasn't expecting him to carve out a boulder, punch a hole in the boulder, crush it down into basically a baseball, and shove him in and bury him alive. That was the craziest win I think we've seen. I mean, no one saw that one coming. I mean, even if you thought the king would come in, there's no way you perfectly predicted that he would throw him into a boulder. Like, that was absolutely crazy. And to see the raw strength of a half-powered king, the fact that apparently Boji is stronger than the king, I think that will be interesting, because my idea of how this part was going to end, because we have 23 episodes, so now we have 3 left to go, seemingly Boji versus the king is going to go down, but it feels like almost, because now that we're not going in the direction of Miranjo saving them and reversing Oaken's kind of like ferocity, it seems like Boji probably will beat the king, and in return, this very well could be a moment of either the king letting go and letting Daida can come back, or maybe Boji actually has to kill the king, and in doing so, that will free Daida's soul to come back to his body. I very much could see them going in that direction, so that, you know, ultimately Daida coming back has to happen because Boji took the life of his father, and then in return Miranjo gets set free as well and faces her demons, which we get the confirmation when she does ultimately die, the devil is coming for her soul, which most likely will also come for the king's soul as well. I'm very curious though to see what the final moments between the king and Boji will look like, because as we see in this episode, he very much still does care for Boji and the others, but he also very much loves Miranjo and will do whatever it takes to keep her safe. So it's very interesting to see how they didn't agree necessarily with the kind of suffering of Oaken, because as we know, Oaken didn't choose his life. Oaken was cursed and in return has become the demon that we see, and crushing him down into that little ball basically for eternity unless someone sets him free, trying to regain his health. Like, that probably is a lot of pain and a lot of darkness. It's worse than he's ever faced. So I can understand picking up swords, even though it's defeated. It also doesn't sit right with your own empathy and humanity, so that's pretty interesting to me. But the fact that we actually kicked this episode off with even more kind of content I wasn't expecting. I thought this portion of the story was done, but the idea that Miranjo actually comes face to face and talks with not only Boji's mother, but her own mother, and how they're both just so disappointed that she chose this life, and how, you know, it was interesting with last week because she very much was starting to feel a lot more human, like that little girl that we were seeing in the flashback. So it almost felt like she was locking away what her mother taught her after experiencing the hell that she did. And to see them actually get more through, and how Boji's mother, you know, even though she was cracking her knuckle, she wasn't wanting to fight. She's beyond that type of rage. And it was so fascinating to see her afterwards just reflect on basically realizing that it feels like she locked a part of herself away when she entered that mirror, and now she's so confused, and that's why she can't give orders or even stop Oaken in that moment. So to actually see them come in clutch with that healing magic, I love how they always cover their tracks. Daida is the son of Queen Hilling. Queen Hilling has magic, so ultimately, someone like Daida inheriting it is something to be expected. Put the king's power in that body, you're going to be able to do something that no one else can do in this show. And it still feels like there's stakes, right? And I love that about this, because all these characters I want to see make it to the finish line. The only ones I think who can't is, without a doubt, the king himself. Miranjo could honestly survive. There's actually an argument to be made about that, her kind of redeeming herself. But in terms of Daida coming back, the king needs to go, whether that's willingly letting go or someone like Boji stabbing him in the heart that kills him, and then Daida can take over, and then maybe we can heal him in the process before he dies as well. It's hard to say where they want to go, but nonetheless, this was top tier. It was badass, it was frightening, but it was just emotional in all the right ways, right? Like, Ranking of Kings is honestly like one of the best anime I think ever made, and honestly at this point it's probably like my second favorite show I've watched. It just feels like we're building up to a finish line that if we never get to see the second part of this story animated, I honestly don't think it's going to be as much of a sin as other stories, because this very much feels like it can serve as an ending. Like, we're building up to something where, even though the kingdom story is going to continue, the fact that the manga just started its second part, we know that there's not going to be enough material for a second season for many years to come, and who knows if we'll be able to put together a similar team to create a second season living up to the quality we're seeing here. But unlike a lot of those one season and done shows, it almost feels like this could work in that way. If the manga eventually gets an English translation, an official one, like, there's not even like fan translations out there that you can really dive into the source material. That's why so many people are blind to the show, because unless you just like looking at pictures, you're not going to really know what's going on in terms of the true context. So that's what has me excited, is that with the last 3 episodes, I feel like the vast majority of Ranking of Kings fans are going to walk out of this show saying, yeah, I hope years down the line we get a season 2, but goddamn, what an ending. And that's what it feels like we're building up to, is like a parting scene with the father and Daida coming back and maybe accepting that, his brother, because most likely Boji's going to be the one to save him, might actually be more fit to rule. Or maybe Boji won't even want the crown at this point. Maybe he's going to like adventuring more. I have no idea, but this leaves me very excited for the future. And seriously, I think the devil coming back and claiming a soul is going to lead into whatever the second part of the story wants to tell, but it'll be interesting to see how the anime will want to handle that portion, or if it is really going to feel like a nice bow to kind of tie it all up. But seriously, thoughts and feelings on this week's episode. Brutal, exciting, terrifying, exhilarating, everything you can possibly imagine is how I'd recommend and rate this episode. But yeah, let me know what you're feeling down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. Till next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.